In Chicago, two comedian skeptics named Andy and Art were mysteriously abducted by the illusionary mastermind and conspiracy theorist known only as Mr. Bunker. The following serves as a record of Bunker's attempt to convince non-believers of the truth about conspiracies and paranormal activity. Andy and Art give an uninterrupted presentation and verdict on the plausibility of these offbeat topics, delivering what they call the whole enchilada. Will Mr. Bunker convince these two skeptics any of this is real? Will it convince you?
Everybody, and welcome to Mr. Bunker's Conspiracy Time podcast. As always, I'm your co-host Arthur Stone, and with me as always is your co-host Andy Hart.
Hello, listeners, wherever you are in the world.
Hello, good to see you this week, Andy.
Nice to see you, Art. You're looking fine, looking sharp.
Well, thank you.
Handsome as ever.
Well, thank you. I shaved.
Wow, it shows.
I did a double shave.
I haven't seen your chin in ages.
Have you ever done a double shave, Andy?
A double shave? I don't even, you shave twice?
Yeah. You shave once downstroke and then again upstroke.
Upstroke?
Makes it baby smooth.
I've done that, but not shaving.
Swimming, right? Double stroke?
Swimming.
Yes. Listeners, today in the bunker, we got a great topic for you, don't we, Andy?
It is a doozy.
If you're into government conspiracies, if you're into surveillance, if you're into
abuses of power,
racially charged material, today's topic is going to be
for you.
For
this
you.
is for you.
Andy, who suggested today's topic?
We actually had today's topic sanctioned by Mr. Bunker, but suggested by a listener.
That's right.
Nathan from Salmonok suggested today's topic.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thanks, Nathan. This was a good one.
It was a great suggestion, great topic. And, if you listeners want to send us a topic that you want to see us discuss on the show, you can email us at mrbunkerpod@gmail.com or
you could tweet at us.
That's right.
At Mr. Bunkerpod.
That's
on
right.
The Twitter platform.
Listeners, if you want to get right to all that steaming whole enchilada action of Cointelpro.
That's right.
Actually, I don't think we ever said the name of the topic.
That's what we're talking about. We're talking about Cointelpro.
Yeah. If you want to skip right to it, we will leave a timestamp in the show notes or the description. Look for it in whatever podcasting app you use. That goes for every episode. You can skip right to the research.
Skip right to the research. If you hate Art and I talking to each other, then just go right to the research.
Because right at the top, listeners, you know it, you love it. Maybe you don't.
Maybe it's just me and Art that love it.
Maybe just we love it.
We need to talk about it.
Every week, Mr. Bunker captures Andy and I and brings us down to a secret doomsday bunker. And we like to tell you exactly how he got us this week. So,
yeah.
Why don't you go ahead, Andy?
All right, I'll tell you.
I think you were saying that you got a wild one today.
I have a pretty good one, I feel like.
Yeah.
Nathan from Salmonok, if you're listening, I think you're going to like this one. So, Art, it is summer officially here.
Ooh, sweltering summers.
In the Northern Hemisphere. And specifically in the state of Illinois, in the metropolitan area of Chicago, where we're located.
Very good.
And it has been a steamer. It's been a real Chicago steamer.
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking for ways to get out of the heat. I saw that
on a video once.
I did too. Yeah, the Chicago steamer.
Great train.
Yeah, great train. Beautiful train.
They really ran train.
Yeah, it's one fine running train. It really plows through any obstructions. But I've been looking for ways to beat the heat.
Yeah, you love beating things.
Love to beat the heat. I love to beat things. And so, what's one good place to go to cool off is the movie theater.
That's right.
It's so cool,
nice,
cold,
usually air conditioned, dark.
And so the movie theater's great. So I go to the movies this morning, I guess, to go to get out of the heat.
Right.
And one thing I love at the movie theater, I love those movie theater snacks.
You love snacks.
I am a snacker.
Andy, I don't want to interrupt you, but I just want to say, not a popcorn fan.
What, in general?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't like it gets stuck in my teeth. But I like the flavor and I like the taste, but I just can't deal with stuff getting stuck in my teeth.
What do you think of a popcorn Jelly Belly?
Oh, no.
Yeah, no, don't care for it either. Yeah. Jelly Belly, if you're listening, don't care for the buttered popcorn.
I love the factory tour, though. I took that factory tour when I was a little kid. Great factory tour.
Never been, but one on my bucket list for sure. My jelly bean bucket list. So I head to the snack counter at the movie theater. I get 2 large buckets for popcorn.
2 big old buckets.
2 big old buckets. I get one full of popcorn, and I get the other full of that melted margarine stuff, and I just stick a straw in it. Now,
so you got one big old tub, a large tub,
big old, one of those like
popcorn in one hand.
Yeah, one of those huge.
You're cradling it.
Yeah, like it's baby-sized buckets of popcorn. And then one that's just full of that false butter, that like trans fat liquid. And I got a straw in there. I love the movie concession so much. I jump right in. I don't even wait to get to the movie. I just start slurping down that margarine. Now, naturally, like I'm slurping this down and I drink the whole thing during the previews. So, I'm like 2 previews in and I just get freaking diarrhea in the theater. And I gotta run like as one of those clenched butt cheek runs.
Sure.
To the toilet there at the movie theater. So 45 minutes later, I'm headed back to the theater to see the movie. And I'm walking by. You know how in the movies they have all those displays for like previews. Like now it's like every movie theater is so big. It's like there's like a labyrinth. You got to walk through all this hallways to get back to your theater.
Sure.
And they got all these displays for upcoming movies where it's like cardboard cutouts.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
So, there's this like this cardboard cutout of a like portly looking Spider-Man. And, yeah. So as I walk
for the new Spider-Man movie.
Yeah. As I walk by, it like
He's
comes
a
to
little
life, and starts shooting me with web. And, it turns out it was Bunker. And I'm like subdued in the web, and I'm rolling around on the ground, and then all of a sudden the Spider-Man like rips off his like spider outfit, and he's wearing like a movie theater employee outfit.
Oh no!
And he like stuffs me into one of those like huge bags of popcorn. Like the popcorn's already popped, and they just put it in that like case. And so he like puts me in one of those huge bags of popcorn, drags me out of the back of the theater, tosses me into his van, and here we are.
You didn't shit your pants. I'm shocked.
No, I shit on the toilet like a big boy. That was after.
I must have missed that part.
He showed mercy today and let me go.
Right.
I was in the bathroom for a while with diarrhea.
Okay. You missed a lot of the movie.
I missed the whole movie. I left during the previews. I mean, I would have missed like probably 30 minutes of it. Just like from the diarrhea, but then I missed the whole thing because I came here.
Yeah. You know what? Well, Andy, I mean, I'm glad that, Bunker showed a little mercy to you. I think
I deserve it, frankly.
Well, I don't know. You've been pretty critical of him. You've been pretty mean to him.
I got to say, he got me this time. I mean, I haven't been keeping up with the Spider-Man films, and I noticed this was a sort of out of shape Spider-Man,
and you didn't know.
But I was like, well, maybe this is the direction.
Maybe this is the way they're taking it.
I thought it was some like young, hunky twink kind of Spider-Man from the.
Oh yeah, that's how they describe him for sure. From the hunky twink
from the ads I've seen, but
a honky twink. What's that honky tonk man song?
What?
'Cause I'm a honky tonk twink.
I don't know.
You remember that honky tonk song?
I don't know that song.
That one?
I don't know.
Yeah, come on, you know what I'm singing.
Nope.
Listeners, if you know what I'm singing, tweet at me. Honky tonk. Anyway. Yeah, so you don't know what's going on with any of the Marvel universe. So, you're thinking
I'm out of the loop, and
Yeah.
this is not helping at all.
You're out of the loop and into the web.
Yeah, into the Spider-Verse.
Into the bunkerverse. Wow.
But at least I smell like popcorn today instead of other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you reek of butter.
Yeah.
More so than normal.
Well, it is coming out my pores, basically.
Wow, Andy.
I mean, I did drink like 148 ounces of margarine.
Your heart, you better donate it to science.
In 2 years when I expire.
That's why you have that barcode on your forehead.
Yeah. Yeah, if anybody...
Or that expiration date.
Yeah. If anybody knows of any free hearts, I could use one.
I see one right here. Here's a free heart in front of me. Well,
that's my story, Art.
Wow.
So here I am. What about you?
Here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down.
It was that Michael W. Smith?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know any of the top artist names in hot contemporary gospel rock,
Hot gospel
Christian rock. Andy, as you know, you might be described. You might have been described both. Whether this is a fabrication or not. Lore on the podcast that you were a pig.
Yeah.
Now, I've been known to be vain, wouldn't you say?
I would say that's probably what most people recognize. That's if we each have a deadly sin associated with us, mine is gluttony,
Sure.
and sloth, and yours is vanity.
You get two, I guess. Probably avarice
Avarice too, for me or you?
for me.
Yeah.
And lust.
All right. So if there's four,
We both lust.
there's four deadly sins associated to each one of us.
I don't think I can name the other ones.
don't know.
Anyway, Andy, I think this is unfounded though, but regardless, I was working out
Greed.
nude
Oh,
in
you
front
said
of a
that.
changing mirror.
Yeah. Okay.
And
Working out nude?
yes,
Okay.
I was working out and flexing nude in front of a changing mirror, which is in the privacy of my own home. Who cares?
Yeah, I guess.
But a lot of people seem to think that I'm vain or I'm some kind of, self-centered person.
Were your curtains and blinds drawn? Or?
They might have been.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm getting ready to bench press, and I'm gonna do my normal weight, which I don't need to say on the podcast.
Where's the mirror in relation to the
It's one of
bench?
those large changing room mirrors that has like four of them and then a little
Okay.
platform.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's right at the head of the or it's right at the base of the bench.
So when you lift your head up, you see straight from
I just see a full
pelvis,
taint
your
shot.
knees, and yeah. Okay.
Full taint shot.
Okay.
Which you got to check the healthiness. I mean, you got to, people don't know this about the bench press. And your wife is a trained physical therapist. She can attest to this, that the bench press works the taint. Very well.
I'll ask her about that.
You got to have a strong taint if you want to get strong. You got to have a strong base. Anyway, Andy,
Good pelvic floor.
I'm going to bench my normal weight, which we don't need to talk numbers on the podcast here.
The numbers really are too big for the
The
listeners
numbers
to understand.
are just, if you listen to our episode on the Boatez Void, you'll know big numbers.
Yeah. Think astronomical in scale, the amount of weight Art lifts.
So I'm putting on my normal weight, and then I'm about to unrack the bar. And as I do, boom, it just comes crashing down onto my chest.
Oh.
And I'm starting to suffocate, and I'm thinking, what the heck happened? What the heck? And then I see it. He leans over.
Wiley Brooks?
No.
Oh.
Nope.
I thought he came to spot you.
I didn't have any cheeseburgers or Diet Coke today.
Dang.
That Wiley Brooks. It was Bunker. And he leans over and he says, need a spot? Can I spot you one?
Well, that was nice.
That was nice, but he put on extra weight. So much weight that even I couldn't lift it.
Wait.
So there I am, fully
Wow.
nude.
How did he do this?
I don't
Did
know.
he have a team of people
He
come
must
in?
have had a crane. Or some kind of lifting device, a dolly perhaps. I don't know. Or he's
Clearly.
unnaturally strong. He could have old man strength. That's a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
He put so much weight on that I was trapped under the bar, Andy, and I couldn't. I was struggling to get it off, but there was nothing I could do, and he just bagged me up.
Wow. We both got bagged.
Yeah.
Bagged and tagged.
So I'm shocked, you didn't, I'm wearing a space blanket covering myself, but I am fully nude
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. Yeah,
So.
you've showed me a few times. I get it.
Okay. I'm just saying. So that's how I got captured today.
Did he like spot you in a reasonable amount of time, or you were like struggling for a while?
No, it almost immediately crashed onto my chest.
Yeah, but did he pick it up?
It hit me in the solar plex, knocked the breath right out of me.
Did he pick it up though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was real dizzy, like I said. I got the wind knocked out of me. I've been telling him to put a gym down here in the bunker for a while now, and he just doesn't seem to want to.
Yeah.
But I figure he's got to have one somewhere. Maybe he's got a membership to Planet Fitness or something.
I can't see him signing up for a membership
Anywhere.
anywhere.
Well, yeah, that's true. He doesn't like to. If he would pay in cash.
I'll bet he's lifting like old refrigerators out in the woods or something.
Yeah. Just lifting old refrigerators.
Big like tractor tires and
Yeah.
stuff. I had a bench press bar crash down on me one day. It was in a 24-hour fitness facility.
Oh, when you used to work out at like 3 a.m.
Mm-hmm, yeah, and I was all by myself in the gym. And it just like my arms were like, I was toward the end of the, it's like you do some reps, you take a break.
Sure.
You do some reps, take a break.
Yeah, you do sets.
Yeah, I was in like I was like towards the end of the second set, and it was just like,
yeah,
arms got weak.
How did you have the energy to work out at 3 a.m?
It's like if you abuse your body enough, like you'll be surprised what you can get out of it.
Those are great words.
Take it from a true fitness guru. Yeah, I just had to struggle out of it, and then
wow.
Yeah, they watched me on the security camera and they were laughing at me.
They just watched you with dicks.
Well, it was later in the day, so I was obviously I was fine.
Oh,
but it's just like it was me like trying to shimmy.
You did the shimmy. Did you go low or did you go high?
Well, I kind of just like pushed it off to the side, like over, so and then it just like fell on the floor.
And
then I just disassembled it, and everything was fine.
Yeah. I think most people probably shimmy. I think you should shimmy down. Try to get it towards your hips and then sit up.
Yeah.
And then you can kind of roll it off your legs.
Yeah, I tried to shimmy up, and it's like, oh, nope, this is going to crush my skull for sure. So,
yeah,
abort that mission.
Wow. Mission aborted. Well, listeners, that was how we got captured this week. I hope you enjoyed it.
And if you didn't, I hope you're enjoying the research because you got a head start.
You already skipped right ahead to it. But hey, if you'd listened through it, now we're ready to get to it.
Yeah. Wow.
That rhymed.
Like
we said, Andy, had you ever heard of this topic, Cointelpro, before?
I had heard this acronym before, but if I'm being quite honest, I didn't know really the details. I didn't know the scope of it or anything like that. So I wasn't really in the know.
Yeah. I think I had never heard of it either. And I think, I think you talk about things that are similar to it, because I think even today, a lot of topics like, and we can, we'll probably cover this in the discussion, but ideas of surveillance and privacy and things like the Patriot Act and et cetera, are things we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And that's all related to this topic. So if you're into surveillance, government conspiracies, if you liked our MKUltra episode, I think this one's going to be for you.
Yeah. If you're a weird little voyeur, you're going to get a sick thrill out of this episode.
If you got a real, what's that, rear
view mirror?
Rear view? No, not the Pearl
Rear
Jam
window?
album. Yeah.
You're talking about Jimmy Stewart?
The Jimmy Stewart movie.
Yeah.
The Hitchcock film.
Hitchcock, yeah. Rear window.
If you're into that, you're gonna like this.
You're gonna this will heal your leg.
Oh,
jeez. Okay, well.
Oh, Jimmy Stewart. Come on now. Oh, angel got such wings. You want the moon, Edith? Oh.
I saw a movie once on TCM, Turner Classic Movies.
Yeah.
Where Jimmy Stewart played like a a tough sheriff with like a yellow shotgun or something.
Why was it yellow?
I don't know. It had something to do with the movie.
Okay.
I don't really remember the details, but I was like, Jimmy Stewart as a cowboy? I'm not buying this.
Yeah.
But everybody did Westerns. That was the time.
That was the thing. Before every movie was a Marvel movie
Yeah.
or a Star Wars movie, it was a Western.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's ride off to the sunset here, Andy, and explore the topic of Cointelpro.
The Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI, is the top law enforcement agency in the United States. As the Domestic Intelligence and Security Service of the United States, the Bureau is responsible for investigating crimes, counterterrorism, and counterintelligence efforts. Ostensibly, the purpose of the FBI is to aid in the administration of justice and to help keep U.S. citizens safe. As we'll discuss today, though, the FBI has at times been used as a tool of state-sponsored repression, infringing on citizens' rights rather than upholding them. Our focus today is the FBI's Cointelpro, which was officially active beginning in 1956. Cointelpro is a portmanteau derived from counterintelligence program. Pretty clever, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cointelpro encompassed a number of operations undertaken by the FBI aimed at disrupting and discrediting domestic activist groups and leaders the FBI deemed subversive. Official Cointelpro operations stopped in 1971, but have similar operations continued at the FBI under different names? Does the spirit of Cointelpro live on, even today?
Now, before we talk about the potential for modern-day Cointelpro-like operations, Andy, we got to understand just what Cointelpro was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you mentioned, Cointelpro was an umbrella program that consolidated a variety of FBI initiatives aimed at disrupting, sabotaging, discrediting, or defaming activist groups, the leaders of those groups, or even just people sympathetic to relevant causes or groups, right?
Right.
So some key targets of Cointelpro operations were the Communist Party of the USA, the Socialist Workers' Party, the Ku Klux Klan, the Nation of Islam, the Black Panther Party, and basically any group associated with the quote-unquote new left social and political movements, which, you know, given the time, included anti-war, community, religious groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is 50s to 70s America. I don't know why I said America like that.
America.
Basically, listeners, the FBI came after anybody who didn't think the USA was A-OK.
That's right, Art. Now, listeners, we're gonna get into a history of Cointelpro operations, but before we do that, let's talk about some of the methods employed by the FBI to further the so-called success of Cointelpro operations.
Andy, this is a great idea, and let me tell you why. I'll start by talking about one of my favorite methods of doing anything. Infiltration.
No.
I'm a sneaky little bandit, and I love to pretend to be part of a group where I'm not welcome.
Yep. You're welcome in so few groups, so
Very
you have a
few.
lot of opportunity here.
When I show up into group chats, someone adds me to them. Weirdly, everyone else
Instantly,
leaves.
it's you alone.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
The FBI infiltrated activist groups either by placing agents in the groups or by recruiting current or former members of targeted groups to be informants. Now, FBI infiltrators sought to discredit targeted groups or individuals to disrupt the operations of said targeted groups or to negatively redirect the group's activities. As it turns out, the FBI was decent at infiltrating activist groups, especially the Ku Klux Klan, which was apparently really easy to infiltrate.
Who wouldn't have guessed?
Who would have guessed? You kind of just have to dress up like them.
Just show up.
Those funny little outfits, and you just kind of, hey guys. The FBI infiltrated groups so well, in fact, that eventually the groups became fearful of law enforcement officers in their ranks, right?
Mm-hmm.
The FBI then turned that fear back on the activists by painting genuine activists as informants or undercover agents.
Yeah, and Art, the FBI also used psychological tactics against its COINTELPRO targets. Some of the dirty tricks employed by the Bureau were things like forging documents and letters used to sow dissent in targeted groups. Anonymous letters or phone calls placed to leaders to encourage suspicion of other groups or group members. Bad jacketing, which is a term used for the practice you mentioned, Art, of spreading rumors that actual factual group members are working with law enforcement, and also strong-arming people associated to targeted group members to make their everyday lives difficult. The way this last tactic played out was the FBI or local police would threaten or intimidate people who could make activists' lives more difficult. Think like family members or landlords or employers. Then the FBI or the police would have those people, the family members, employers, landlords, etc., do things to disrupt activists' private lives.
Given what we've talked about so far, this next tactic, probably isn't very surprising, right? The FBI also abused the legal system to harass focal subjects of COINTELPRO.
No.
Yes.
Shocking.
The Bureau employed a wide array of noble and totally legal methods.
Oh.
They fabricated evidence, which led to arrests based on false pretenses, which led to wrongful jailings of activists.
So legal.
FBI agents or local police also supplied perjured testimony at activists' trial, which is just a lawyerly way of saying that the police lied under oath. The FBI also engaged in extensive surveillance of targets, many of it, not even the slightest bit legal.
Oh, okay.
Aside from these direct acts, the FBI also used the power of actual laws to harass activists, such as recruiting the IRS to annually audit some COINTELPRO targets.
Now, listeners, I'm going to tell you right now about some of the unlawful uses of force committed by the FBI under the auspices of COINTELPRO. The FBI frequently collaborated with local police departments in COINTELPRO efforts, having the local officers conduct break-ins or warrantless searches of activists' homes. FBI agents and local police also attempted to intimidate COINTELPRO targets. If the Bureau couldn't achieve its goals just by threatening violence, they decided to go all in and do some violent things like beatings or assassinations.
Listeners and Andy.
Okay.
Let's not forget that the FBI also waged a war of public opinion on COINTELPRO targets, right?
Mm-hmm.
The FBI created damaging news stories aimed at swaying public opinion against targeted groups or people. The Bureau had connections to individuals working for reputable papers, so often they could get these works of fiction printed. And if that didn't work, the FBI also created fake newspapers, fake news, and printed the stories there. Sorry. Excuse me, I was burping. Hoping the legitimate news sources would then pick up the story and use the fake one as a source, right? The FBI also produced a few fake documentaries trying to paint specifically the Black Panther Party as a hate organization. The FBI director at the time, the famous/infamous J. Edgar Hoover, circulated a memo to FBI field offices during this time that said the following, quote, "Purpose of counterintelligence action is to disrupt the Black Panther Party, and it is immaterial whether facts exist to substantiate the charge."
Cool.
I could never work at the FBI because I can't read.
You never get these memos.
Yeah.
All right, listeners. Now that we know some key methods utilized by the FBI in pursuit of COINTELPRO, let's talk about the history of the program. COINTELPRO operations officially began in August of 1956 at the height of Cold War communist hysteria. COINTELPRO's initial primary target was the Communist Party of the United States of America, or CPUSA. The Church Committee, which, as we've shared with you before, think back to MK Ultra,
That's
for
right.
example, The Church Committee was a U.S. Senate committee formed in 1975 to investigate abuses by the FBI, CIA, NSA, IRS, etc. The Church Committee described the initiation of Cointelpro in this way, quote, Cointelpro began in 1956, in part because of frustration with Supreme Court rulings limiting the government's power to proceed overtly against dissident groups, end quote. Now, as we already discussed, in our Kennedy Bros episode, J. Edgar Hoover was an avowed anti-communist. Combine Hoover's legendary paranoia with a tense global political environment, and you've got a recipe for an FBI crackdown on socialist and communist groups.
And crackdown they did. The FBI's goal with the CPUSA was to sow dissent, increase factionalism within the organization, and to encourage defections from the group, right? Mm-hmm. The Bureau made use of most of its arsenal of methods against CPUSA, including heavily infiltrating the organization. In fact, the FBI was so successful that by 1957, CPUSA membership was under 10,000. And it's estimated that about 1,500 of those 10,000 members were FBI informants. Two important FBI informants in the CPUSA were brothers Jack and Morris Childs. We'll call them by their FBI code names. Solo.
Ooh, so
Not
sexy.
to be confused with Han.
No. Jack and Morris Solo.
That's right. The Solo Bros were Chicago-based former CPUSA members when they were approached by the FBI in 1952 about infiltrating their organization.
Yeah, and if I may interject here, Art,
please, Andy, please.
As you can see, COINTELPRO type activities weren't limited to the time frame during which COINTELPRO was officially active. Now, we're going to talk more about this in a bit, but in this case, the Solo Bros were recruited as part of an ongoing surveillance program even before COINTELPRO was officially underway.
Okay, Andy, thanks. But back to the story I was trying to tell our listeners.
Okay. All right.
Jeez Louise.
Sorry. I thought that was important.
The Solo Bros decided to take up the FBI on their little offer and use their connections to rejoin the CPUSA, but this time as informants. While CPUSA originally had relations with the Soviet Union, those ties eventually, they became frayed, and in the early 1950s, CPUSA didn't really have an open line of communication to Moscow. With the FBI's help, though, Morris was able to re-establish CPUSA's link with the Soviet Union. Morris ended up making many trips to both the Soviet Union and China, reporting back on the communist governments to both the CPUSA and high-ranking U.S. government officials, including the president.
Wow. Now, later, in October of 1956, so a mere 2 months after COINTELPRO operations officially began, J. Edgar Hoover reclassified the FBI's ongoing program of surveilling African-American leaders under the COINTELPRO banner. Art just mentioned that COINTELPRO was started as an anti-communist program. So how did it make the leap to civil rights? Well, based in part on information received from the aforementioned Solo Bros. Hoover became convinced that the civil rights movement was loaded with communists. Initially, the FBI targeted Bayard Rustin, a former CPUSA member, and Stanley Levinson, an activist who the FBI believed was a major financial coordinator for the CPUSA in the early 1950s. The FBI had Levinson under surveillance by the Solo Bros. Rustin introduced Levinson to famed civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. in 1956. The FBI itself admits, based on its own surveillance, there's no evidence of ties between Levinson and CPUSA after 1957. Despite that, J. Edgar Hoover was certain that Levinson was using King as a pawn in the communist game plan to destroy the very fabric of American life.
Hoover even used these supposed ties to communism to get authority from none other than famed podcast subject, former Attorney General Bobby Kennedy.
Probably he's best known for his appearance on our podcast.
Well, he didn't appear. He's dead.
Yeah, well, we talked about it. Anyway.
We talked about him.
In spirit.
Anyway, they got authority to wiretap King's phones. Now, supposedly, Bobby only authorized limited wiretapping on a short-term basis, maybe a month. No matter how limited the approval was, Hoover took it as approval to wiretap anything that could pick up MLK's voice. The FBI bugged King's phone lines and hotel rooms where he stayed. At one point, MLK criticized the FBI for its record on white terrorists. This led to Hoover publicly referring to King as the most notorious liar in the USA. The incident only lengthened Hoover's weird boner for bringing down MLK.
That's right, Art. In fact, it led Hoover to stepping up efforts against MLK, with King becoming a major focal point of COINTELPRO operations. In mid-1967, the FBI started up a special COINTELPRO project called COINTELPRO Black Hate.
Little on the nose.
Yeah. Not
Not very covert.
No, not a very imaginative name on that one. COINTELPRO Black Hate was aimed at so-called black nationalist groups, which was not very well defined by the FBI and basically included any group advocating for civil rights. One goal of this initiative was to prevent the rise of what the Bureau called a, quote, black messiah, end quote, who could unite the entire black nationalist movement. MLK was seen by the FBI as this potential messiah. That is, only if he abandoned nonviolence and integration and instead advocated for violent separatism. During the time, the FBI used its extensive bugging of King's hotel rooms to compile audio tapes of King having extramarital affairs. The Bureau sent an anonymous package to MLK with the audio tapes and a letter urging him to take the, quote, one way out, end quote, before his alleged true self was made known to the public. King was later informed that the tapes would be released to the media unless he committed suicide before receiving the Nobel Peace Prize.
In addition to trying to convince MLK to commit suicide, there is a suspicion as well that the FBI was involved in King's assassination. Even after the assassination, the FBI continued to try to discredit MLK by diminishing his record and arguing against public holidays dedicated to King and against public celebrations of his life. Martin Luther King wasn't the only Messiah candidate that the FBI focused on, though. The Bureau also targeted Stokely Carmichael, an activist who was the chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, like Snick at Night.
Snick at Night.
Carmichael was so abused by the FBI and the IRS that he fled to Africa in 1968. Despite leaving the country, Carmichael continued to be surveilled by the CIA for years as part of a CIA program tracking black activists overseas. And let's not forget about Malcolm X.
Okay.
The FBI was keen to sow dissent in the Nation of Islam organization because the Bureau felt like Malcolm X could unite black nationalist groups and didn't have the same predisposition to nonviolence that King or Carmichael did. The FBI used bad jacketing techniques to ultimately create a rift that directly led to Malcolm X's assassination by members of the Nation of Islam.
Another favorite target of the FBI under COINTELPRO Black Hate was the Black Panther Party. In fact, the Black Panthers accounted for 233 of the 295 authorized COINTELPRO actions related to black nationalism. That's a big ratio. All this despite the fact that, in some cases, the FBI couldn't even find a good reason to undertake these actions. One example comes from 1969 in San Francisco. An FBI special agent writes J. Edgar Hoover that his investigation into the local Black Panther Party concluded that, at least in San Francisco, the Panthers were primarily engaged in feeding breakfast to children. The Black Panther Party was somewhat famous for its free breakfast for children program, which, as it sounds, provided free breakfast to children. Hoover sent a memo to the agent implying that the agent's career goals were directly affected by his ability to supply evidence supporting Hoover's view that the Panthers were, quote, a violence-prone organization seeking to overthrow the government by revolutionary means, end quote. I'll mention, too, that Hoover even targeted the free breakfast program by going to donors to the program and trying to convince them to dissociate from the Panthers by spreading rumors or painting the Panthers as a pro-violence organization.
Listeners, this is a Chicago-based podcast, and where would an episode on corrupt police tactics be without a Chicago connection?
Chicago. It's
my kind of town.
I'll show you around.
I'll show you around. We don't have to answer that question today, luckily, because you better believe that COINTELPRO involves corrupt Chicago police. Fred Hampton was the chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. The FBI tried to stoke the flames of local tension in Chicago by pitting the Chicago Panthers against a street gang allied with the Panthers, alleging that Fred Hampton had a hit out on the leader of the street gang. When this failed to result in Hampton's murder, the FBI turned to the trusty Chicago PD to finish the job. One of Hampton's bodyguards was a FBI informant and shared the floor plan of Hampton's apartment with local police. The Chicago PD conducted a illegal raid on Hampton's apartment and, in the ensuing break-in, fired 90 bullets into Hampton's apartment, mostly at his bed. Hampton, by the way, had been drugged by his bodyguard prior to the raid and was unconscious the whole time. Chicago PD claimed that the Panthers opened fire first, which, of course, was later proven to be, wait for it, not true.
Wow. So, listeners, the FBI did a bunch of horrible, illegal stuff and was actually kind of successful in its goals of stifling New Left activism. Given that Hoover was a powerful FBI director and that multiple presidential administrations were aware of COINTELPRO and did nothing to stop it, how is it that we know all this stuff today? Well, it's all in thanks to, you guessed it, an illegal break-in. That's right. A group of 8 activists known as the Citizens Commission to Investigate the FBI burgled a 2-agent FBI field office in Media, Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia, on March 8th, 1971. Using the Joe Frazier Muhammad Ali, by the way, himself a target of COINTELPRO, using the fight of the century as cover, the Citizens Commission to Investigate the FBI broke into the field office, stealing a trove of documents, which were later gradually released to media outlets.
Now, the identities of these burglars remained secret until 2014 when they were finally revealed. The burglars even avoided being found by the FBI itself, which dedicated upwards of 200 agents at one point to finding the thieves. When the documents were released and the news of the FBI's excesses were aired, it was a severe black eye for the Bureau, and J. Edgar Hoover died in 1972. So he never really had to answer for any of his part in these schemes like COINTELPRO, but the documents obtained from the Pennsylvania office did help the Church Committee, which roundly criticized FBI practices and concluded that COINTELPRO overstepped statutory bounds and violated the rights of U.S. citizens.
And there it is, listeners. There you have it, the story of COINTELPRO. Or is it?
Well, actually, Andy.
Yeah. Yeah, put your glasses up higher on your nose when you do that.
Some people believe, even though COINTELPRO officially ceased operations, that the spirit of the program continues to exist even to this day.
Ah, a very good point, Art.
Yes.
You know, between the official end of COINTELPRO and the Church Committee hearings, so we're talking 1972 to 1974 here, the FBI opened over 2,000 pieces of personal mail and placed warrantless bugs over 500 times. After the Church Committee concluded, reforms were put in place to better define the FBI's scope and powers and to limit the Bureau's ability to engage in domestic spying. Reforms took a hit during the Reagan administration with implementation of counterterrorism guidelines that had similarities to COINTELPRO methods. Some even suggest that COINTELPRO came back for good in 1994 in the form of the Department of Justice's Community-Oriented Policing Program, or COPS. COPS seeks to enhance police force effectiveness by aligning police with the communities they serve. Some see this as the police recruiting civilian spies to tattle on their neighbors so any perceived bad actors can then be harassed by the police.
Now, Andy and the listeners, you dear, sweet, sweet listeners, let's not forget about 9/11. Never forget.
Never forget.
The 9/11 attacks led to a reversal on many of the reforms enacted in the wake of the Church Committee, specifically the USA Patriot Act. And here's something a lot of people don't know, Andy. USA Patriot, in this context, is actually an acronym for Uniting and Strengthening America by providing appropriate tools required to intercept and obstruct terrorism. Now that's a goddamn acronym.
Now that's a hell of an acronym. USA, USA.
We hit acronyms hard. The bottom line is, though, Andy, the Patriot Act made domestic spying easier, and investigations have found that the FBI regularly exceeds even this expanded authority.
Even to this day, there are things happening that have a Cointelpro-like flair to them. Consider the case of Rakim Balagoon, a Texas-based activist who is frequently critical of police brutality. Balagoon was participated in a protest against police brutality in 2015, which is when the FBI allegedly began surveilling him. Finally, in 2017, the FBI arrested Balagoon under charges of domestic terrorism. The FBI filed these charges on the basis that Balagoon was illegally in possession of firearms, which Balagoon denies. Balagoon was jailed for 5 months, and eventually all charges were dropped because the government couldn't prove that he was prohibited from possessing a firearm.
For some context, the FBI released in 2017 a memo, right, which was eventually leaked to the public, which warns of the dangers of so-called black identity extremists. The memo warns that the way these black identity extremists perceive police brutality against African Americans may lead to an increase in premeditated violence against law enforcement. Now, Rakim Balagoon was, the first person arrested who was classified as a black identity extremist. Many believe the FBI memo basically brings the Black Lives Matter movement under the scope of Cointelpro-like tactics. As an interesting note here, the FBI memo was released just days before the infamous and deadly white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. A similar memo covering white identity extremists either does not exist or has yet to be leaked.
Now, as we know, Cointelpro officially ended in 1971, and J. Edgar Hoover died in 1972. Those are the facts. These are also facts, though. In the time since the end of Cointelpro, the FBI has continued to overstep its authority and has continued to infringe on the rights of U.S. citizens. Is there a legitimate reason for the FBI to take these actions? Is the FBI keeping Americans safe, or simply repressing views that upset the status quo? Can we really say that Cointelpro was abandoned? In closing, we leave you with this quote uttered by J. Edgar Hoover. He was referring to communism when he said this, by the way. I quote, "Yet the individual is handicapped by coming face to face with a conspiracy so monstrous he cannot believe it exists. The American mind simply has not come to a realization of the evil which has been introduced into our midst. It rejects even the assumption that human creatures could espouse a philosophy which must ultimately destroy all that is good and decent."
Mr. Bunker's Conspiracy Time podcast will be right back after this brief message.
Ooh, it sure is chilly outside, Art.
Andy, where's your jacket?
Art, did you hear me? The wind chill is 30 below.
Andy, I think you have hypothermia.
You know, Art, with the horrific chilly weather outside, the only thing that'll warm me up is listening to Andy and Art Debunked, available only on patreon.com/Mr. Bunkerpod.
Are you seriously shilling our Patreon right now?
Oh, Art. Laughing at the antics of Andy and Art is all the warmth I need. And for just $5 a month, I get access to all the episodes of the show, behind-the-scenes updates, sneak peeks at episodes, and I can chat with Andy and Art on the Bunker Discord.
Andy, we need to get you to a hospital.
We need to get me to patreon.com/Mr. Bunkerpod. It's so chilly. Oh, God, I'm chilled to the bone.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Mr. Bunker's Conspiracy Time podcast. That was our research into the topic of Cointelpro, or as I sometimes say in my head, Cointelpro.
We've all said that in our heads, sure. Cointelpro sounds like a really good Coinstar machine.
It does. It also kind of sounds like a Latin phrase.
Cointelpro. Yeah, I've seen that written in legal documents.
Quid pro quo.
Quid pro
Cointelpro.
quo. Quid pro quo.
That's where you give someone a crow for a favor, right?
Yeah, they give you something, you give them a crow.
Which you should not have as pets. Don't send me on another bird rant, Andy.
Okay, listeners, we gotta move on.
People
we gotta
get so upset when I go.
Let's talk about Cointelpro. So Cointelpro, boy,
Andy, blanket thoughts. We always kind of start the discussion with some blanket thoughts on it. I mean, you know, maybe it's just the cynic in me, and I'm sure the cynic in you, but it doesn't really shock me or surprise me.
It's not.
You know, we've already done research into MK Ultra, so this is kind of. I'm not saying it's like not a bad thing. I'm just saying it's not shocking. I'm not sitting here going, "Oh my God."
It's not shocking that it happened. You know, I don't think that it's like such a surprise that the FBI would, you know, abuse its authority like this.
Yeah. But
I do think that what was maybe surprising was the tenacity which like the targeting of certain groups. It's like,
I'll be honest, they're good at their jobs.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing that you could say about Cointelpro. Like no matter what you think about it, like the FBI was actually pretty successful
to infiltrate a group.
Yeah.
It's so easy. Just show up. Hey, I'm part of the group.
Yeah, right. I want to join. Okay, cool.
Sounds good, dude.
Yeah. As long as nobody finds out you're like feeding information to the FBI, you're probably okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is like every mafia, every gangster movie ever. Eventually, someone starts, I guess a little different, but, you know, this is, or like The Departed, which I think was loosely based on real stuff.
Right.
I'm sure you've never seen The Departed.
I've seen it.
You have?
I've seen it. That's a movie I've seen.
I like that movie a lot. I used to watch it like every day.
Every day?
And I would like fall asleep to it, which is a very weird movie to fall asleep to.
You know what? You sound like me. Like you watched it like
You watched
night.
Gladiator.
Yeah, as Gladiator.
No, I would take after school naps.
Oh.
Not at night.
Oh. I would turn Gladiator on at night. And a lot of times I would like fall asleep as like Russell Crowe is like wiping snot on his like hanged wife's feet. You know that scene?
I don't remember it particularly. It's been a while since I've seen Gladiator.
Yeah.
Well. Are you not entertained?
Yeah, I would never make it that far.
Oh,
it's me, Russell Crowe.
I'm Russell Crowe. Are you not entertained? Me, Kermit. Are you not entertained, Miss Piggy? Shut up, frog! Hey, if anyone out there wants to hire a Kermit and Miss Piggy impersonator, Andy and I are your guys.
Art and I have so many outfits and so much body paint.
It ain't easy being green. Ah! But
you know,
as I'm saying, you know, it's like that in the movies where eventually someone just starts squeaking to the police or the FBI. The FBI infiltrates these people, but a lot of times, you know, what'll happen is they'll let crime keep going.
Yeah.
You know, they'll let someone continue to commit crimes, or they'll have their agent, their undercover like the undercover agent has to like keep continuing to commit crimes to kind of fit in.
Yeah.
And they'll overlook that in order to get the bigger fish, right?
Yeah, I read a story while doing the research for Cointelpro about an activist group that ended up like committing like arson. Basically, like they burned down a building. But the group ended up not being held responsible for it because they couldn't have pulled off this crime without the information and stuff supplied to them by the FBI informant in the ranks.
Right.
So it's like they did this thing that the FBI thought they were going to like hook them on because it's like they did this, but it turned out like, you know, somebody was able to figure out that the person was an informant. And so it's like they wouldn't have done it if it weren't for the FBI.
Yeah.
And I'll say this too, like talking about communists, like it's funny to me that CPUSA, like after World War II, like they really didn't have like a link to Moscow.
Yeah, they sucked.
Like they were kind of on their own a little bit.
Like, well, we lost connection to the
and then the FBI like helps sets it back up again. Like, I mean, it ended up that like
thanks, guys.
Like Morris Childs did all this, like he traveled back and forth between like Russia and China and the US, and he was bringing back information on these governments to the US government. But you know, it's funny, it's like the CPUSA may have just died on the vine.
Yeah.
If the FBI hadn't gotten involved.
Right.
And then it's like out of 10,000 members, 1,500 of them, like 15% of your membership is the FBI. I even read a quote from a federal prosecutor who, like, I'm just paraphrasing here, where he basically was saying that like the FBI essentially was like paying the dues to keep these like these organizations alive.
They're keeping the lights
like,
on.
Yeah, like they've so like heavily infiltrated that they make up most of the dues paying members.
Sir, the numbers are in the CPUSA is stronger than ever. They have top of the line facilities. We gave them all the best equipment.
We are 90% of the membership.
90% of the membership is the FBI. At this point, we're about to motion in an article into our bylaws to just change the name to the FBI.
Basically, CPUSA is now an FBI field office.
The communist wing of the FBI.
Yeah, we're all communists now, by the way.
Great work. This is my J. Edgar Hoover impression.
Good work, boys.
Good work, boys.
I have no idea. I
don't know what he sounds like either.
That's a good point. I should have listened to him.
I'm sure Leonardo DiCaprio did some research for his role as J. Edgar Hoover in the movie J. Edgar
Hoover.
I'm gonna be honest, a very boring movie. I've seen it multiple times, and
is that one you used to fall asleep to?
No, I used to program direct movies. You remember for my college?
Oh, right.
You remember that? And that was when Hoover came out, and Hoover is one of the ones we picked.
Oh, so you had to watch it a couple of times.
I should. Yeah, I've seen it like 3 times, I think. Anyway,
yeah.
Well, Andy, I don't remember. Did we get to your blanket statements? I mean,
I'm gonna say blanket statements. I agree with you. It's not totally shocking.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's like, it's things like the Black Panther Party that it's like weird the way that the FBI went about attacking them. Like, it's like Hoover gets these weird inclinations toward things. Like,
yeah,
he got a weird thing about communists, and then it's like he got a weird thing about Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah, it was like almost like a game to him where he just had to win.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worthwhile. I mean, this is not in the script because J. Edgar Hoover's personal history is not really a part of Cointelpro, but I think it's kind of worthwhile, like providing some context on like his life.
Yeah, you love to discuss J. Edgar Hoover. You think he's a fascinating guy.
He's a character for sure. Like here's just some things about him.
Sure.
So he lived his entire life in Washington, D.C. He was born there. He went to school there.
Wow.
He died there. Like he lived entirely his whole life in Washington. So
that's kind of weird.
Like, yeah, I mean, like the ultimate insider, I guess. His career, like if we can talk about his career for a little bit. So he got a law degree from George Washington University, and started working at the Department of Justice right away. He got hired in the War Emergency Division in 1917. The job, by the way, that paid $990 a year.
Was that a lot for the time?
And then it would be $19,400 in today's money.
Oh, that's not a lot.
Not very much. But he did get draft exemption. So he was eventually he became the division's the head of the division's Alien Enemy Bureau.
Now, this is not George Tsoukalos aliens.
Right. This is migrants.
Right.
Immigrants. So he was authorized by President Wilson at the beginning of World War I to arrest and jail allegedly disloyal foreigners without a trial. So that's how he cut his teeth. So like, okay,
It explains a lot.
this is starting off on the bad foot.
Yeah.
So he got additional authority for this in the night, with the passage of the 1917 Espionage Act. And a fun fact: out of a list of 1,400 suspicious Germans living in the U.S., the War Emergency Division arrested 98 and designated 1,172 as arrestable. So almost the entire list they determined were a subject of arrest.
It's like a really shitty version of a hot or not website.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Arrestable or not.
Yeah. Terrible.
He's fucking swiping right on all these Germans.
RateMyGerman.com.
Yeah.
How many chili peppers?
It's Das Tinder. Das Arrester.
to our
Die Arrester.
to our German listeners.
Of which there's probably not
there are-
many.
Yeah, few. Sure. We say to you, welcome.
Welcome. Wunderbar.
So then he got to be the head of the Bureau of Investigation's General Intelligence Division.
Okay, we've got
Which
we've got Hans, age 24.
you're
He's listening to the hottest big band records right now on his
Wait.
Spotify.
Why is this Hoover in
Yeah.
his German accent?
Well, I don't know who this is. I don't know why it's a German accent.
Somebody's in this. Somebody hacked the mainframe.
Read his little bio here. he likes to eat currywurst.
Would arrest 100%.
Would arrest. Swipe right. Okay, next.
But then eventually Hoover becomes the head of the General Intelligence Division for the Bureau of Investigation, which was known as the Radical Division because it was
not radical by skateboarding.
No, this is not a skateboarding term.
Yeah.
It was supposed to monitor and disrupt domestic radicals. So this was at the height of the first Red Scare in the United States. So like immediately following the Bolshevik Revolution in the USSR. So Hoover was like on the forefront of the initial thrust to like beat back communists in this country.
No, I mean, Andy, you're a bit of a history buff. Definitely, I will say this, even though I'm such a vain, self-centered person, much more so than I.
Thank you. That's incredibly, what an honor coming from
You know, if you want to sit here and talk about, lore as it pertains to obscure Polish fantasy novels, I'm your guy. But if you want to talk at history or, math, I think you're the guy to go to. Andy.
Wow, math? Wow.
You're
Thank
good
you.
with like
That's
taxes and
wow.
confusing math.
Everything's bigger in taxes.
What do you think about the sort of early communism scare? Because it's a different landscape than it is today, right? You have the Communist Party gaining a lot of power in big nations where they could very well be global threats to both the U.S. and the other allied forces. So what do you make of, do you think it's, I don't want to use the word justified, but because I can't think of another word, do you think it's justified in their sort of we need to be fearful of communism in this early stages of the Red Scare?
Well, I mean, one thing that I think is
disregarding maybe the tactics they used, but just a general over high concept picture of it.
I mean, here's something to keep in mind. In the U.S., there are really two Red Scares. there was
Clifford the Big Red Dog.
yeah, when Clifford came to life. That's number one. And number two is when the Western Kentucky University Hilltopper mascot came to life and was shot by an embiggening ray and began attacking Western Kentucky.
They don't talk about that in the history books ever.
That's the real conspiracy. No, there was immediately following the Bolshevik Revolution, like in the 1920s, there was a big red scare in this. We ran completely out of Big Red gum in the U.S. Wrigley couldn't print enough of it.
And good riddance, I say. Yeah. Cinnamon gum can suck a dick.
That gum can jump off a bridge. But the people there was a lot of governmental concern that, you know, it happened in Russia, the Soviet Union, like the fall of the monarchy there. And there was a fear that these winds could sweep into the United States. And, you know, with what we can only describe as like historically terrible working conditions. Like
they it wasn't fun to live in the Soviet Union.
No, I mean, and workers in this country didn't also have like similar protections and stuff. Right. So, you know, with increases in labor movements, like there was a real fear at the government level that communism would take hold and there would be a revolution. Mm-hmm. So that led to some of these more draconian like tactics that were utilized. You know, the second Red Scare was like in the 1950s, like post-war.
Sure.
And that's where we got McCarthyism,
sure.
And stuff. And, you know, Hoover grew up, like we just said, cutting his teeth, like cracking down on communists in the first Red Scare. So the second Red Scare was probably like second nature to him. I don't think it seems like he never left that world, like
right.
that he became like that quote at the end of the research, like he becomes convinced that communists have infiltrated every sphere of
it's
American
like a confirmation bias kind of thing.
Right.
He's
like
seeing communism everywhere, or like how my grandparents were raised during the Great Depression. Thus, they were incapable of ever spending money or doing anything fun.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Or expressing love.
Okay. Well,
I'm
sure.
Just joking.
Oh, boy. Well, that's this week's episode. Yeah, but I think you're right. It's like he got to this point where he saw communism everywhere.
Right.
And it's like he felt like there was a huge communist conspiracy to bring down the United States government.
Okay.
And so the tactics that he employed, like the reason he went so hard against communists is because he thought that it was legitimately a threat. And it's like, you know, I hope this doesn't sound like justification of anything, but it seems like his leap then from communists to civil rights activists was sort of the same thing. There were a lot of the same kind of people to his vision, like he saw communists there.
It was like a Venn diagram.
Right.
There was overlap.
There was overlap. There were communists
people who may have been
part
of the civil rights movement may have also been part of communist movements.
Right. People who were advocating.
Doesn't mean everybody.
Yeah. People who were advocating for workers' rights may have also been advocating for civil rights, or may have been protesting against the Vietnam War.
Right. Not a hard jump.
So, I mean, it's like there was probably a lot of overlap in the people, but it's like he felt like these groups were sowing unrest in the United States,
right.
And it was all designed to like subvert the government and bring it down and like replace it with a communist government that could be ultimately controlled by the Soviet Union
rather than just amend it.
Right. Not that this, not that the Soviets were like, let's spread communism around because we think it's good.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, he made the logical leap to say that this is a calculated plan to like take over our government by a hostile foreign power.
Right.
That said, I don't think that they found a whole lot of evidence that anything like that was going on.
No. And I mean, we eventually toppled the Soviet Union kind of toppled itself, to be honest with you.
Yeah. We didn't,
we put pressure on them, but,
sure.
But if you really look into the history of the Soviet Union, which especially during its collapse, they were fucking like, they had unrest in all the properties that they had, like all these other countries that had their own nationalistic identities. Like, all these other Slavic countries that wanted independence. And it was just like, it was a shit. I mean, it was bad.
Yeah.
And eventually like I forget his name, but the new president kind of rose to power, and he basically just kind of like was like, yeah, we're going to get rid of that. We're going to axe that.
Gorbachev?
No. It was
Yeltsin?
Yeah. It was before
Boris
Gorbachev.
Yeltsin?
I think it was Yeltsin.
No, Yeltsin was after Gorbachev.
Or after. I can't remember. I watched a video on it, but now I can't remember. I struggle with retaining information. But anyway, I do think, though, again, really attests to how cool and what a great leader Martin Luther King Jr. was. I mean, can you imagine getting fucking bundles in the mail from the government telling you to kill yourself?
Well, to be fair, he didn't know for sure that it was from the government at the time.
Oh, right.
They came anonymously, so he didn't know exactly who.
There wasn't like a
doing
little
this.
sticker in there that said, like, from your friends at the FBI.
Yeah. The FBI return address at the top.
Really interesting, too. I think we got to talk quickly or briefly about the connection to our friend Bobby Kennedy.
Bobby K.
Bobby, hey, man. Not cool.
Bobby was a big advocate of the civil rights movement.
Yeah,
what happened essentially with this whole wiretap, I mean, like how they got these recordings is Hoover goes to Bobby Kennedy, who's the attorney general at the time, and he's telling him that like he thinks that the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which was like Martin Luther King was the primary like person in that organization
right
at the time, and it's like he said this organization is completely infiltrated by communists. It's a threat to this government, and we need to find out what Martin Luther King's up to. So Bobby authorized like a limited wiretapping of his phones.
He's like, all right, just.
So what Bob...
He didn't authorize fucking sending Martin Luther King Jr.'s wife recordings of MLK talking to other women saying like he's cheating on you.
Right. He didn't authorize any of that stuff.
I mean, really, it attests to their strength as a family and to him as a leader. I could never, to stand that immense pressure.
Yeah.
Oh, any normal person would crumble.
Yeah, he like endured it and didn't even like give in, like,
and won.
Yeah, well,
in a way. I mean,
yeah,
he was assassinated.
Yeah,
but you know what I mean by win. Eventually, the civil rights movement kind of had
his memory's not diminished.
Right, he has. He's got monuments. He has a national holiday.
Right, like Hoover has the building the FBI lives in. And
right.
Some people think they should change the name of it still.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, like Bobby basically authorized this on sort of like a trial basis. And you know what Bobby's supporters will say is that his goal was that he authorized Hoover to do it because he was so certain that Hoover would not find any evidence of communist infiltration that it would completely then just like the whole thing would just go away. That like Hoover would look into this the slightest bit and find there was no evidence at all of communist infiltration and it would just go away. But of course, Hoover took it and completely blew it out. And like you said, went way overboard with it, even to the point of encouraging Martin Luther King to commit suicide.
Right. And I think it also should be mentioned, not just Bobby Kennedy, every fucking president, while this thing was officially going on, and let's cut it off in the early 70s, and then I think because then from there on we have to then talk about a higher concept, which is this still going on today? But we'll save that for a moment, and that's going to be the basis of our kind of our rating and our review.
Right.
But
we can't issue a verdict on Cointelpro because it's a fact.
Right.
It happened.
It's like MK Ultra where we're going to say like, is it still going on today?
We're going to
talk
about is it happening still?
Right.
Yeah.
But every single president used it in this time to just spy on whoever the fuck they wanted.
And
Nixon used it on everybody.
Like LBJ used it on.
Oh yeah, Goldwater.
Yeah, on Barry Goldwater.
Or no, that was Nixon.
Well, LBJ used it on his opponent in the 64 election.
Right.
On his like staff members and stuff.
Oh yeah.
LBJ said about Hoover that it was better to have him inside the tent pissing out than outside the tent pissing in.
Oh yeah.
Like
And that dude loved to piss on tents.
Guy, if you get him in a tent, Hoover's gonna piss on something. LBJ, obviously Kennedy made use of his services, was aware of COINTELPRO. Dwight Eisenhower, Harry Truman, even FDR was using Hoover to spy on people that were like deemed as dangerous during World War II. So like COINTELPRO's roots go back to like the very like from the very beginning for Hoover.
And we're getting into a discussion of like just surveillance of citizens in general.
Yeah.
And that's
where this goes.
Huge topic. I mean,
Sure.
There's so much to discuss with this, but
this is all part of like some of the stuff that, you know, like that Edward Snowden like revealed the NSA's excesses.
Oh yeah. I got some information on that once we start talking about higher concept stuff.
But it's like, even, you know, in the past, even there's been massive illegal surveillance on U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
Anybody that's suspected to have some connection to some movement or some particular philosophy, one of the burglars for that burgled the FBI field office that blew this whole thing up. She was a mother. She had children, and she took a child. She had a child on her back.
And she burgled the office?
No.
Oh.
And they were, you know, she was an activist.
Wow. I got to say, you're a fucking shitty thief. You bring a baby to a burglary.
Or you are a great mom. Art, fuck you for that opinion.
Hey, there's a funny sketch SNL. Okay, you guys want to do that skit? Okay, it's thieves, and she brings the baby to it because she couldn't find a sitter. Am I right?
Lauren Markles, are you listening?
It's just a little contrived.
I'll give you $1 million for it.
Great.
Bring back my shoe. You remember TV Funhouse?
Yeah.
The dog steals the bring back my shoe.
I might be one of the few comedians, though, that didn't grow up
Funhouse.
watching SNL. I wasn't allowed to watch it, and I didn't grow up watching The Simpsons either. We've discussed that.
Yeah. Yeah, the real conspiracy is why Art couldn't watch The Simpsons growing up. Meanwhile, I make at least one reference every episode.
Probably. And it goes over my head.
Average is maybe more than that.
I mean, but as far as surveillance go, I mean, people make jokes about it nowadays, even today. It's like, it's common knowledge now.
Oh, wait.
People joke about like, oh, I got put on a list.
I was going to say the activist, the
Oh, right, the activist.
The Citizens Committee to Investigate the FBI.
Yeah, the mother.
Yeah, Bonnie Raines. She had her child on her back at an anti-war protest, and the police were there and took her picture and took a picture of her child. Like she said, they took a picture, then took a picture of the child. Like they were just there photographing activists.
Yeah.
Like it's wild.
Yeah.
Like just getting your picture on file so that you can so that they can target you later for stuff.
Yeah. You get put on a list.
Yeah.
Well, Andy, are there any other, I feel like there's two discussions to be had here, and we're kind of in the middle of the historical discussion. I don't know if there's anything else you want to say about J. Edgar Hoover, or if there's anything else you want to say about
just
history of
historical.
Sorry, I'm burping.
A little more. You got a lot of gas today.
Oh, I ate before.
You okay?
Yeah.
All right, good. A little more historical context on COINTELPRO.
Sure.
Like from a tactical side, COINTELPRO sort of grows up like in the late 50s and into the early 70s with the increased militarization of police forces in this country, in the U.S. So like just some historical perspective on that. In like, think about the 1930s.
Okay.
There were, especially in the Midwest, like a rash of bank robberies.
Bonnie and Clyde.
John Dillinger.
John Dillinger.
These bank robbers and their
Johnny
gangs.
Depp.
Johnny Depp. Yep. You know him. You love him. Robbed a lot of banks in the 30s. They terrorized, banks in the Midwest, stealing money. And they were they outarmed local police. They had them outgunned.
Tommy guns.
They had faster cars than them.
That's how NASCAR started.
Yeah.
Prohibition.
Yeah, exactly. So like these were people who were basically criminals that were technologically superior to the police force.
Right.
So Hoover at the time in the 30s pressed for the government to reclassify bank robberies as a federal offense so that the FBI could take it over.
Right.
And they had a few like embarrassing hiccups when they initially took it over, but then they kind of like pulled out all the stops to like arrest these bank robbers and stuff. And it's like eventually they start like using like post-war, they start using like military tactics and getting like military grade equipment. And then that becomes like part of the, you know, the FBI is the top police agency. And eventually that like makes its way into the practice of local police forces.
Right.
And so they start, you know, police start gradually adopting. It's like less about like police work and more about like, it's more like military training and stuff. And so this Cointelpro kind of coincides with this increased militarization of the police force, which I think you could say probably now, like the police forces in this country are very militarized.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a lot of military type equipment.
It depends on where you're located for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my little hometown doesn't have a
you don't have an armored vehicle,
but like, I mean, it's crazy. I remember reading about a police officer killed in Columbus, Ohio, and the police had this like armored like personnel truck that's basically like military grade.
Yeah.
And this guy gets shot by somebody. He's like riding in the turret at the top, and it's like, what do they need a turret for? What are they going to find? Like,
well, I think you'd be surprised. I mean, you look at situations like North Hollywood bank robbery and stuff like that, or somebody like, I mean, I think Waco was a shit show, but
yeah,
you look at Waco where there's just a bunch of people in a fucking compound that just have like all these crazy weapons, and you're just like, well, fuck, like you can't send normal police officers after that.
Yeah.
You got to bring in like higher level SWAT teams and things like that.
Yeah, but it's like, you know, I don't know. I question the like need for this. I question the need for it.
Yeah.
The philosophy behind it.
Yeah. I saw a video once of like a police raid in Russia. It was just kind of funny how it's just like how they do things different. Like it's just like in Russia, there was a gunman or someone held up in a building and they just like roll up in a fucking tank. And not only are they firing the turret part of the tank, like the machine gun part of the tank, like at the building, they eventually just fire the actual cannon at the fucking building. Just like that's how Spetsnaz is gonna or whatever the fuck is gonna take care of it.
Yeah, jeez Louise. And it's like in like, have you ever seen like European police, like videos of European police?
Yeah.
You know, it's like I don't know. I saw something that was like in Sweden, where there was like a person with a knife.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. The video was funny to me because I was like, there's no way this would ever happen in the United States. There's like 4 or 5 police officers like surrounding this person and they have like no weapons.
Yeah.
And so it's like the person's got a knife and they're like, they can only focus on one person. So like the police officer in the front like gets a little bit closer and they start like going with the knife and then somebody jumps on from the back and they just like, then another police officer jumps on.
I don't know why they don't have like non-lethal things. Like you could easily tase someone and then that's it.
That's ended.
And I mean, I don't know the statistics on tasers, but
it's so American that it's like like other countries.
But that's dangerous to jump on someone with a knife.
Yeah, it is for sure.
Even as like a trained police officer, like I think you'd be shocked at like the reaction time is so like little between like what, you know, like people think that stuff like just because you're trained and stuff, sometimes like you have this like cheat code. It's
but it's still
nothing in life ever
just
happens.
Still
that
a human
fast.
being.
That person could easily take that knife and just
Yeah.
Get him in the jugular a couple times real quick.
Yeah. But it's like, it's funny to me. It's like in Sweden, they probably don't have tasers because it's just like, they don't consider that to be like humane.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
or even like rubber or stun gas.
In this country, it's like, we don't have tasers because we don't have the budget for it. We'll just give you a gun. We got plenty of guns.
Well, I think a lot of police forces have tasers.
No, it's just funny that it's like every officer will have a gun.
Well,
it's like, like in Chicago, like not every officer has a taser. Like every officer has a gun though. It's just like so American.
Yeah. Anyway, now I think, Andy, we should discuss, I guess, the question of, is this still going on? But it's kind of hard to just say, like, is the actual program Cointelpro? Because it's probably not that program, but it's probably some kind of like, it's in a similar vein, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's not necessarily called that, but.
Yeah, Cointelpro died officially in 1971.
Right.
But. No, it's this, like, there have been a lot of things in the time since Cointelpro ended. Like, I mean, as we said in the research, like, even immediately in the wake of it, the FBI, like, ahead of the church committee hearings, opened 2,000 pieces of mail and bugged illegally 500 different like targets. I don't know. It's obviously there were some measures taken after the church committee. Laws were passed. Really, what it was is like there's attorney general's guidelines that kind of help define the scope of what the FBI can do. Mm-hmm. And that all got refined, and they sort of like redefined what the FBI could do and what kind of surveillance they could undertake. And, that got repealed. That kind of got like, people either don't use it today or it just is kind of ignored. Like after 9/11, the attorney general, whose name is escaping me right now. You know him. He was the one that sang that song, like about the eagle on eagle's wings or whatever it was.
I mean, I was like 10 years old after 9/11. So
geez. Ashcroft? Is that?
I probably would not know the name of the attorney general in 2001.
Hold on, listeners. We'll get this for you.
Janet Reno?
No, John Ashcroft. John Ashcroft. That's it. So yeah, John Ashcroft.
You saying what? On the arms of an angel?
On the wings of an eagle, I think is what the song is called.
On the arms of an angel. You did ask.
Fly away with me.
Him and Sarah McLachlan.
Yeah, they did a duet. If you haven't heard that song, go ahead and listen to it. Look it up. Google it. It's on YouTube. But after 9/11, he sort of like revised the attorney general's guidelines to increase the scope, widen the scope of what the FBI could do,
right,
in terms of domestic surveillance on U.S. citizens. And the USA Patriot Act furthered that, and it's kind of like now today, we're sort of in another. I mean, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. It's almost like a very COINTELPRO-like situation. Like every administration,
it's like a meme now.
Yeah, every administration's aware of it, but they do really nothing to curtail it.
I mean, the Snowden shit dropped, and everyone was like, "Wait, what?" And it's like, yeah, like.
NSA's like, sure, we do that.
Yeah, we've been doing that forever. and they collect metadata on you in a lot of different ways. So that's kind of how, in some ways, they skirt around it. Is they don't necessarily collect like hard information. They might not be like infiltrating your whatever and like reading your fucking mail, but they collect digital footprints and metadata on you that can pinpoint where you are. So it's like locations. It's like things like
there's like a technique that police use. Like I saw this specifically with like Chicago PD.
Yeah.
Doing this with respect to Black Lives Matter activists. Right. Like whenever they scour Facebook and stuff to look for like events and things so they can get wind of like when there's going to be planned demonstrations or whatever. And they have this truck that they drive along near the protest that like intercepts, like it basically mimics a cell phone tower. So all of the cell phone traffic goes to the truck before it goes out. So they can like then intercept, and like that's basically like very illegal because
it's surveillance.
because they don't know what they're going to get. They don't have like warrants to search these people, and you know the probable cause is questionable at best.
There's things like the 5 eyes, 9 eyes, and 14 eyes, which is more global surveillance, which is probably a topic in and of itself.
Right.
And I mean, it's just kind of like I don't know. It's just kind of like a meme nowadays, right? Like, it's just like,
Yeah.
you're being surveyed. Like, I mean, the joke is that like Alexa is listening to you, right? Or Google
Right.
Home or whatever the fuck they're called.
It is.
And it is. And are they necessarily listening to you? Probably not. Do they have the capacity to do it? Yeah. I mean, I think people like Google have even said that. Like, yeah, we have the ability to do that. It's not hard.
Yeah.
It's got a fucking microphone in it. It's connected to the internet. What do you think? Like,
We all have these little computers in our pocket, and you
Yeah.
know as well as I do, you say something and then it shows up, you get an ad for it.
right.
I mean, in the truest American sense, like that's really what happens. You're being completely surveilled by everything in your life.
Yeah.
And it's really only being used to help sell you something, to like feed you advertising that
Yeah.
people think might connect with you.
Right. Right.
Or infringe on your freedoms.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of, I didn't realize this, what like kind of a moot discussion point it is.
What? Surveillance in general?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like the question is, it's still going on today. It's kind of like, yeah,
Yeah. Like I mean,
it's kind of been shown multiple times.
yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's like when we talked about MK Ultra, there's no real evidence that it's still continuing, and there's no real evidence
Right.
that the CIA was successful. But with this one, it's almost like
I mean,
wanna
it's not necessarily the FBI. I guess really the discussion is there still government surveillance of various groups? And it's probably like, yeah.
Yeah, like
Obviously.
obviously. You know, the like we said in the research, the government, the FBI had that leaked memo that talks about black identity extremists, which
Right.
to me, from a historical context, it sounds an awful lot like black nationalist groups. Like it's the
Right.
same. It's the same thing where it's like the FBI doesn't really do a very good job of defining it, and they can just basically use that to target any.
It's like
Any
you,
person-
where you say vague statements so that you can
Later on, I can say
later
I was
on
right.
deny or claim to be
Right.
right about certain
Yeah,
things.
exactly. It's the same thing. Like they haven't defined what a black identity extremist is.
Right.
They never really defined what a black nationalist group was or what a black nationalist was. They've just used that then as what I want to say as justification for the tactics. Like they create probable cause by making up a term,
Right.
basically, and they say, well, this, you know, like Rakim Balagoon, like, oh, he's a black identity extremist, and it's like, well, what does that even mean? Like, you know, he never, they didn't define that for him. It's like, oh, well, just under the terms of this memo, like he fits this profile of a person who's a black identity extremist, because it's like, oh, occasionally he's like posting about black power or something. I mean, and then they just use it to, like, you know, he was jailed for 5 months while they tried to prove that he was illegally in possession of firearms, which they could never ultimately do. He wasn't a prohibited person.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you have any other discussion points? Because I kind of feel like we should.
I kind of feel like we got to the end, like we're at the time to deliver a verdict, and you know, I think at this point the listeners are not going to be super surprised by what we say. Who should start? here?
Go ahead,
Okay.
Andy.
Well, I'm going to start. I mean, like, obviously we talked about it. Cointelpro is a fact. It's established. The church committee uncovered it. We're not going to proffer a verdict because the church committee proved that it happened, and the FBI overstepped its bounds and infringed on the rights of citizens in pursuit of surveillance and other tactics. I mean, up to and including murder. So the real question with Cointelpro is like, is it happening still? And are we going to be are we subjected to this continually? And I think for me the verdict is case closed. Yes, absolutely. It's like we said, they've like defined this as black identity extremists, but so far no word on white identity extremists. There's been a recent slew of like white power type, high profile white power type crimes in the wake of that rally in Charlottesville, and there doesn't seem to be any other group being targeted. So it just feels a lot like it's like if it walks like a duck, if it talks like a duck, but it taps your phones and it intercepts your communication, that's probably Cointelpro. Like, it's just under a different name. Is it? I don't. It's like, when did it come back?
It may or may not be duck shaped.
My guess is probably it never went away. Right? Like
no.
They ceased the program, but then they just kept quiet about it.
Yeah.
It's like it receded back into the shadows instead of being a big target at the Bureau. And honestly, this would have lived in the shadows forever if not for the work of the Citizens Committee to investigate the FBI. They blew the lid on this whole thing, and it really helped lead to the Church Committee, which exposed a lot of these rights infringing excesses undertaken by the agencies tasked with protecting the rights of U.S. citizens. So for me, case closed. It's still happening.
Wow. You've just been on a case closed case.
It feels good to have some cases closed. Like, I feel like we're getting shit done.
Different for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I feel justified in this one. Nobody's going to be able to come back and tell me I was wrong.
I don't need to, I can just echo everything Andy said. Pretty much case closed on this one as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's still massive surveillance of citizens across the U.S. I mean,
yep.
Whether you want to say from just like a Cointelpro-like program or a larger program like NSA, or you can get into even worldly surveillance where you got these 5 eyes, 9 eyes, 14 eyes. They all share stuff. Every major power spies on everybody and just shares it with everybody else.
Yeah.
They all do it. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying it's just like it's almost like this fact of the world that we live in today, this globalized society with our little smartphones. Like, what are we supposed to do? Get rid of all the phones?
Yeah.
Get rid of all the computers?
We have so many more footprints now.
It
would have been so much easier to live anonymously in the 1960s.
Yeah.
And even then it wasn't that easy, but it would have been a lot easier than it is today.
Oh, a lot easier. I mean,
you have used so many places you leave behind a record of your existence.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
2 case closed here today, folks. Hey, listeners, let us know what you think about Cointelpro. Tweet at us. Use the hashtag. I'm Cointelpro.
I was gonna say Cointelprone.
Cointelprobe. Use either one of those hashtags.
Anyone you want. Just go nuts with it, listeners. We'll know what you mean. And as kind of a closing thing, I'll just say, our privacy, with respect to the government, is probably one of the most important issues in every country today. And I think that
doesn't really get talked about a lot anymore.
It doesn't get talked about a lot. And
the whole NSA thing happened and everyone was all up in arms about it, but it's been a little while. People don't remember that. That was
Snowden took the lumps for it, even though he's a hero.
When was that?
He blew the lid off of that.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like it just keeps going on because then, nothing ever happens. And, it's like we, as, for our U.S. listeners, every listener worldwide, like, I mean, be active in your politics. Like, bring this up to your elected officials.
Use a VPN.
Use a VPN.
Reputable VPN, too.
Yeah, don't use a dark web VPN.
Well, no, I didn't say that. What are you even saying, a dark web VPN?
Don't use it.
Andy, what are you talking about?
You guys need some human fingers?
I got them on ice.
I can get you some.
No, you should look up information on the VPN company. It's important where your VPN company is located and where they have their servers and whether they block WebRTC.
Yeah.
Which can, a lot of VPNs say like, oh yeah, it's like we, block the IP address. It's like, okay, but do you also block the WebRTC and other cookie, like, other little footprints that you leave behind that you don't even, it's a confusing technology bullshit, it can be difficult. So,
I mean, get yourself a VPN, get yourself
do research.
I use address in Switzerland. It'll be so secure you won't be able to use it, but get yourself one.
Andy's making fun of me because at one point I set up an encrypted Swiss-based email account that I eventually ended up not using because it's just more of a
Art's everything that's wrong with this country. He took a security measure and then abandoned it because it was too hard.
I still use a VPN.
This is why this domestic spying still exists.
I forget. I think I use a Swiss VPN as well. I'm pretty happy with them.
Really?
I don't know if should I give him a shout out? I guess I should. I use Molvad.
Okay. Molvad. Check them out.
And you can actually go to their website.
The views expressed on this podcast do not represent their views, I'm guessing.
Yeah, let's say that. You can go to, it's MULLVAD. You can go to amimolvad.net and they will check your connection to see how covered you are. What your IP address is leaking, if your WebRTC is leaking, if your faucet is leaking,
if your refrigerator is running.
Yeah. Do you have DNS links? Are you blacklisted anywhere? It'll check lots of things for you. I use it. I'm happy with it. But anyway, folks, that was our discussion of Cointelpro. Andy, any last? I guess you kind of already.
Yeah,
you summarized.
I mean, domestic spying, it's bad, and it infringes on your rights.
All right. Bunker kind of infringes on our rights a little bit.
Yeah,
by capturing us.
He's committing,
and we infringe on the listeners' rights by talking into their ears.
Well, to be fair, we don't force them to. We don't force all of the listeners.
Wait, we don't?
Not all of them. Some of them listen voluntarily.
Yeah, our significant others unfortunately aren't. So,
yeah, they're forced to listen to this, regardless of whether they want to or not. And honestly, listeners, like, shame on us. We deserve all of this.
Wait, what?
We deserve all this.
No, we're perfect.
We are perfect in every way.
And let's leave on that note. We're perfect. Listeners, perfect. For the titular Mr. Bunker and for my Deedle co-host, Andy Hart, I am Arthur Stone saying that was the whole enchilada.
Auf Wiedersehen.